welcome back, everybody. I'm Dan John from danjohnuniversity.com, and this is the 200th episode of the podcast. It's good. I remember one time Pat Flynn telling me that the average podcast only lasts 7 times, and I can understand how that would happen. I really can. I have a number of friends who had podcasts going for a long time, and as one good friend told me, you just kind of run out of things after a while. But fortunately, I think for this podcast, it's user generated. It's your questions. This is a Q&A, and I appreciate that because the questions have kept this thing alive, and I appreciate it. So remember, if you have questions, send them to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. Another thing I want to talk about, my travel schedule's been a little weird, so we've had a pause in the inner circle, but we'll be starting up again. Let me get the address right for you. If you want to be coached by me in our inner circle, go to danjohninnercircle.com to apply. We're going to start sending out those invitations very soon. We already had a number of people. So our first question is from Randy, and Randy says, a lot of people talk about losing weight, but weight can come down through losing water, which is true, good sauna, losing muscle. Certainly there's a number of diseases that can do that. How does a person lose fat while maintaining weight? I want to gain muscle weight and lose fat. Are there any specific techniques? This is, of course, the kind of the holy grail, the thing we all seek in the field. I've always been told, and I think there's some truth to this, that it's probably better to attack fat first and then worry about lean body mass after. Your question here, Randy, where you're trying to do both, now that's tough. Well, a couple of things right away. I think you have to have your protein dialed in. When we were young, when I was young, we were told basically about 1 gram per kilogram, and when you add the numbers up, that's a lot of protein, and it's hard to do sometimes. I know that protein is very satiating, and I've tried multiple programs to do this, and it's very hard to shovel down that amount of protein, but I think it's the most important thing. A couple of things pop up all the time nowadays. Yes, I do think high rep squats are an important thing you have to do. You have to do something to stimulate muscle mass. We're having a conversation with one of my students earlier about why the impact of the deadlift is so much. I still think the fact that it's such a tight central nervous system hit, if you look at homunculus man with those massive hands, pulling deadlifts is not only a big strain on the system because of the load on deadlifts, but it's also a big strain because of the squeeze in the hands. Therefore, I'm not a big fan of deadlifts as the key lift in a muscle building program. I think you have to nail your exercise almost perfectly. We had this conversation a few weeks ago about doing dips, chins, and high rep squats. 3 exercises twice a week, but you really got to get the volume in on the squats. So it's difficult. And I guess you keep hearing me say that word over and over. It's difficult. It's difficult. To lose body fat, I think fasting works. I think, obviously, caloric intervention of some kind, you got to take less calories, works. I'm not sure that what we believed back in the day works as well. Those really difficult, sweat yourself to death, hard workouts. I think they work well in the short run, but they don't seem to work well over time. So you're asking to do the most difficult thing in our little world at the same time, and this question comes up a lot. I think it does help to have an abbreviated program to build lean body mass. As everything, it's going to work for a short amount of time. You could probably work out a program where you did, some heavy military press, some heavy bench press, some rows, but it's going to have to be those staples and those basics that are going to get you for your goals. Again, dips, if you can do them, chins, if you can do them, squats, if you can do them. It's a tough question, Randy. And I know it's tough because this question has been around for a long time. In the Easy Strength Omni book, I discussed something called easy hypertrophy, where you go in and you really push the squat, you really push the dips or the handstand push-up, and that's it. The squat and the handstand push-up, there's your workout. See you in a couple days, twice a week. If you're also trying to lose fat, I think you have to have caloric intervention. But for your cardiovascular work, I think you really need to turn everything down. I haven't talked about one of the most important things yet, and I'll get to that in just a second. So yes, go for long walks. Covert Bailey in his book Fit or Fat talked about it. If someone asked the question, what would you do if you woke up fat one day? And he said he would try to walk 4 to 6 hours every day. And I thought that was a good idea. He also prescribed a very, very low fat diet with lots of vegetables and a lot of grains. Your mileage may vary. Some of us are going to really do well on Atkins, more the low carb route. Other people are going to do better on the the vegetarian route. A lot of it is going to be individual to you, Randy. One of the things I would like you to think about is what's worked for you in the past. When you were at a place you liked the most in your life, what were you doing? Very often when I pose that question, people will say, well, and then all of a sudden they'll stop and they'll realize that, when they were in the best shape of their lives, they had somebody else preparing their meals. They slept a lot. They slept in on weekends, and then they played a lot. So, and of course, now comes the big hit that you're really going to have to address: sleep, Randy. You're going to have to get your sleep in. Sleep. I push sleep a lot on this podcast. I think you need to get off social media. You might have to turn off the television for a while. You probably have to do a lot more, read books in your study and stare out the window and write poetry kind of thing. You need to really turn the engines off when you're not doing your walks, your lifts. You need to sleep. You might have to practice meditation techniques to get yourself to sleep more. It's a tough combination, but I know this to be true. I think if you get your 9 hours of sleep in, plus naps if you can pull it off, if you can get your meditation in, if you can focus on vegetables, protein, and water, if you can get your walks in, and then if you decide to go brutally hard, high rep back squat workouts with a single upper body exercise or two, I'm fine if you do more, but handstand push-ups, dips, chins, something that kind of gives the grip a break. Again, the homunculus man, the neurological hit on this stuff, because you want all your resources going into burning fat and building lean body mass. Doing things like sauna might help you with sleep. It certainly helps. I sauna now before I go to bed. I sauna at night to help me sleep. Localized, like ice baths and things like that might help in the short term, but I haven't really seen a lot of evidence that says, long term it works. Certainly, going to one of these spas that are very popular in the United States West, where they freeze the fat off with these big machines, might work. Certainly, increasing your blackberries, your blueberries, your raspberries, and your apples, so you get the polyphenols in you, are going to help. But if you don't lock down rest, you don't lock down protein, I would argue fiber in any way you can get it, water, everything else is going to be tough. It's not the best answer, Randy, because you're asking to do the hardest thing there is, and a lot of people can't make it work. I suggest usually people lose body fat first and then chase the muscle mass. Randy, I hope that helped. Thank you. Austin asked a question: what do you feel is an appropriate volume for the snatch? It's a good question, and I'm going to stop. It's a whole long response after, but we tried this several times to figure out this perfect thing, okay? and it's been tough. So trying to make easy strength work with the kettlebell snatch. Originally, we thought, you could do, way too much. Originally, we thought you'd go 100 to 140 snatch reps a day. So if it's 100, that'd be 50 left, 50 right, for clarification. Very quickly, we found out that that's way too much volume 5 days a week. So then we slid down to 3 days a week. So basically, if you will, 3 snatch tests a week. And we found that wasn't the best idea either. For the RKC prep program, I have you just snatch once a week with up to 300 reps. But on snatch volume, and this is a good, like Steve Maxwell recently said, the kettlebell snatch injures people. And I know a lot of other people are kind of, getting away from it. I remember when Kenneth Jay's book, Viking Warrior Conditioning, came out, and it became kind of an internet sensation for the kettlebell people, and people were chasing huge numbers in the snatch. Let me cut to the chase, and I'll summarize it for you real quick. Basically, there was this test we had to do with the RKC, which didn't help any of us. Basically, every 15 seconds, you snatch 7 times. So let me give you the workout. At the start of the minute, in 15 seconds, you snatch 7 times with your left hand. Put the bell down, shake yourself out, prepare yourself, 15 seconds. At the bottom, at the 30-second mark, take the right hand, snatch 7 times, rest 15. So it's I use this the second hand, the second hand on my 101 Dalmatians clock in my weight room. So when it hits the 12, I snatch left hand for 15 seconds. I rest when it hits the 3 for 15 seconds. Right hand, 7 reps. When it hits the 6, rest when it hits the 9. Start again when it hits the 12. And I had people, the first time I ever did it, we did it for 25 minutes at the RKC in San Jose. I remember the story well because someone came up with the idea, and then at the 20-minute mark said to, let's do 5 more minutes for the chief, and Pavel. I asked Pavel about it later on, and he said, I don't even know what they were thinking. At the end of 3 days in the hot sun, snatching for 25 minutes is probably overkill. So I say all that. If you're going to snatch 3 to 5 days a week, the volume can be as low as just 40. That's not many. That's 20 left, 20 right. So 10, 10, 10, 10. That's not very much. I'm not sure the snatch works great for a daily movement. Your mileage may vary. I know that a lot of my friends were doing snatch 3 days a week when Viking Warrior Conditioning was so popular. A lot of the people aren't in the field anymore. And so I do think there is the snatch tends to have a pretty high low limit on the number of times a week. But I think you can get away with 40, maybe 50. If you're going to do it 5 days a week, it can swell up to maybe 80 to 100 if you do 2 to 3 days a week. And if you do it like we do, where it's just 1 day a week, you can go up to 300 reps every couple of weeks and maintain that for a while. So maybe on a Tuesday, let's just pick Tuesday just because I picked it. Week 1, 200 snatches. Week 2, 100 snatches. Week 3, 300 snatches. Do a couple weeks in a row with just 100 and then go back to that. Because those 300 and 200 days are brutally long and hard work. The 3x100 thing we do for the RKC snatch prep, it can take an hour, hour and a half for some people to do those 3 5-minute tests. So, of course, your mileage may vary, and it's a lot of work. Thank you so much. We have a great question from Josh. Now, a lot of people might not find this one interesting, but, well, tough. Josh says, I also look forward to your Wandering Weights newsletter each week. Thank you, Josh. That means a lot. I work hard on it. I've been doing it for years now, and I'm amazed how much people like it, and I appreciate that. I remember you used to do a read and review of The Sword and the Stone with each newsletter. If you decide to do this again, what book would you choose? Well, for those who missed this, Josh, each week for over 4 years, I retyped T.H. White's The Sword and the Stone. I think I used his 1938 version. but I also used his 1939 American version, and of course that the compilation version from 1958, I think it was, The Once and Future King, which was a very popular book in the United States. It later became the Broadway play and horrible movie, musical, which was not very good, Camelot. Well, when you do something like that, you really get a great insight. Now, I learned this first back when I was in college. I retyped the entire book, Burton Raffles' translation of Beowulf. And it really was a good thing for me to do, because I got a chance to, I would type out, and then on every time there was a quote, I would type if it was a question, it was a declarative sentence, if it was any kind of sentence. I also went through and noted if it was a discussion of the past, the present, or the future. And I came up with some insights about the book that I really think are solid, and I still use with my teaching today. You really know an author when you retype an author. Not long ago, I read that Cormac McCarthy, who just died actually, what really helped him as a writer, if you read his work, one of the things you know is he doesn't have quotation marks, and he rarely uses anything. I think he uses one semicolon in one book. He's much like the Hemingway. Everything's very tight, a lot of periods, not a lot of junk in his writing. And he picked it up by his professor had him rewrite works from the 17 and 1800s with English poets, and some of them. And it's funny because I'm staying at the Pope Hotel, the Alexander Pope Hotel right now, pub, and you just see all the little marks, the little notes, and it does it now in poetry. It sort of forces you into a line of reading, makes you pause, comma, makes you semicolon, new points, but it's a delightful way to learn. Now, to answer your question, I originally was thinking about doing The Hobbit, and no offense to Peter Jackson, but I think the movies took the breath out of me a little bit. After the movies, they take what's basically is a paragraph and turn it into this almost an entire movie. And I get it, that's how you sell movies nowadays. I just didn't like it. The book I was thinking about, and it's a very popular book, and I think it's a classic, is The Godfather. Mario Puzo's The Godfather. If you read The Godfather and you step back, it is an epic. Now, I like epics. There's a book by David Murray, I got it right, Skippy Dies, where books that just have these massive discussions about love and lust and life and death. You might say that, I don't see love and lust in The Sword and the Stone. Well, you do. You see the angst we have as children when we're trying to figure out what we're going to be like as adults. That great scene where young King Arthur, Wart in the book, sees Maid Marian, and he thinks, that's the kind of woman I want. And of course, things churn out a little bit differently. So that would be a book I would reconsider. If you get a chance to read the book, it is phenomenal. The movies are obviously I'm not going to say three of the best, two of the best movies probably in history. If someone ever was to say to me, Godfather or Godfather Part 2 is in the list of the top 10 movies of all time, I'd nod and go, yeah, probably. Obviously, if you're an American, you throw Citizen Kane in there, but I didn't find Citizen Kane nearly as, intriguing as the two Godfather movies. But, what do I know about cinema? I thought Orson Welles' best movie was Chimes at Midnight, but again, really, you want a strength coach telling you about movies? Yeah. Your follow-up question is this. I know you've endorsed heavy hands walking previously on multiple occasions, but I don't know if you've ever commented on some of Dr. Schwartz's other ideas, including things like double ski poles. I got to say this about double ski poles. Mike Brown and we did a workout of that not long ago. You walking and imitate cross-country double ski strokes. If you ever just say to yourself, I want to be out of breath, looking kind of silly, the ministry of silly walks and or double ski pole walking are probably the best two ways to get your heart rate just pumping through the chest. Yeah, I like it a lot. But your follow-up here, you ask if I've heard of Dr. Schwartz's long strength. Yeah, last year, almost about this time, John McKeon, the great, we used to call them odd lifters, but now they're called all-around lifters. By the way, his article at Dragon Door on constant weight training, I quote it in Easy Strength Omnibook, available at danjohnuniversity.com/bookstore. I think that article is available on Dragon Door. John McKeon's constant weightlifting is something, it's so worthy of discussion, and most people miss it. I tried it for a bit in the Olympic lifts, so you pick like 70%. That worked for me. I think 60% is, I feel like the Three Little Bears, 60% is too light, 80% is too much, 70% is just right. When I was young, the Cuban lifters used to do a lot of singles with 80% and just high, lots and lots and lots of volume with 80% singles. It's the same kind of idea. Of course, the Cubans also slept 9 hours every night and took 3-hour naps. So if you're going to do 80%, you might have to think about your recovery a little bit. Yeah, I like the work of John McKeon. I like the work of Leonard Schwartz. Leonard came up with this idea of long strength, and you would put a pull-up bar at about this height, and I'm standing, and then I squat down, and my arms straighten out, and then I do a pull-up squat to stand up. I tried that one time. I got 60 reps, and good for me. Leonard got 1,000. And then the other exercise was the good morning dip. Now, I like that one a lot. Now, if you read my work, I consider myself a push hinger. So obviously that probably worked a lot better for me. The pull squat was difficult. In hindsight and foresight, that's probably something, both of those exercises, I should probably spend some more time discovering. So you're standing, you do a good morning dip, and you can get a lot of reps on that. And it's very joint friendly for the lower back. Your mileage may vary. I liked it a lot. Okay, good questions, Josh. I appreciate that. Brian asked a question. I gotta brighten things up here a little bit. I remember you saying that aging men tend to lose muscle mass first in the glutes, deltoids, and triceps. Yeah, that's not me. I'm quoting Vlad Yanda with that. And he discovered as people age, certain muscles tighten, the pecs, the biceps, the hip flexors, and the hamstrings. I just turned myself into a very old man. And as you age, certain muscles weaken, the glutes, the deltoids, the tricep, and the ab wall. Now, the ab wall is that he's the guy to convince me, because of that insight, to train abs either isometrically or low reps very aggressively. As I tell my students, vomiting is probably the best ab exercise you ever do. Sneezing is another great one. When I first came online, and this is why I like your question, Brian, I met some women and they called themselves Kids. Atkins, low carb Atkins followers who followed the Atkins diet. But to get in this club, you had to lose 100 pounds on low carb. Now, I'm going to now answer your second part. He asked this. Oh, he says a funny thing. I found this to be true and have a theory that when a professional quarterback's pants get loose around the glutes, their career is quickly coming to an end. Pun intended, he says. My question is, where do women begin to atrophy first, and which muscles should women work on to maintain a more youthful silhouette? So these women on the site, would say if you're going to lift weights, they recommended one of two things: either squat and do overhead presses, or deadlift and do overhead presses. That's why when Pavel's book Power to the People came out, I looked at that. My first thought wasn't that it was revolutionary. My first thought was, that's exactly what the fat loss women are telling me. I think they intuitively figured out as a group and in their conversation, their experience, that working the glute hard, and we have probably more tools now than we did 25 years ago. But if you go to Brett Contreras, you've got the hip thrust, you got the back squat, you got the squat family, you got the deadlift family, you've got kettlebells. You got a lot more options today to work the glutes. Obviously, hill sprints would be another one. And then if you mix and match with seesaw presses, one-arm presses, military presses, whatever, press, you might be working with the fountain of youth. Now, what's interesting about the hip thrust, and anytime I teach glute work, we always emphasize the importance of a contracted ab wall. Here at the university, that's something I put a lot of emphasis on when I'm having my students work on their glutes, or working on the glutes. So, you could find, we are doing this weird little experiment, the 10,000 hip thrust challenge. Instead of the 10,000 kettlebell swing challenge, 500 hip thrusts a day over 20 days. Feel free to join. Well, if you combine that with military presses like Mike Brown and I are doing, Mike Warren Brown, just to keep things separate from all the other Mike Browns on the planet, I don't know. I mean, it's just an experiment, but it's not bad. And don't forget, not bad is probably the highest standard I know. Great question, and it's one of those things that kind of keeps reproving itself over and over. Years ago, I said that, well, it's funny because it's the next question, but years ago I said if all you did was clean and press, you'd be okay, because that's what the lifters in the 60s did. And it's interesting to think that that's what the physios were teaching us, and that's what the experience of low-carb fat loss clients are doing. And it's something that I've discovered in my own life to be true. When you keep adding up enough little data points, pretty soon you got to say, this might be right. Thank you. Great question. Tom asks this. This is why you went so fast from that question to this one. Is the clean and press the perfect exercise? Now, he goes at it a different way, but I was just going to say yes and move on to the next question. Under your framework of hinge, squat, push, pull, loaded, carry, a well-executed clean and press, or clean and jerk too, has every single one of them, especially if the clean is done Olympic style. So a squat, stand up. The hinge, squat, and push are obviously there, but also the loaded carry in the rack position and the locked out overhead. The only iffy one is the pull. Okay, he's about to say the same thing I always say. If you do power cleans, you're getting your pulls in. This move in here is a pull. If someone did nothing but 6 to 10 solidly heavy reps of clean and press or clean and jerk twice a week, and perhaps some pull-ups, interesting addition there, Tom, hats off to you, I bet they would build a serious physique and athleticism with a minimum time in the gym. Do you agree? Is there anything missing? Well, on what you said, I would just say I would still do the suitcase carry, the farmer walk. But listen, if you go back to Pavel's book, Enter the Kettlebell, by the way, the foreword in that book is considered still to be the probably the best written prose since Shakespeare. In his program called The Rite of Passage, it's clean and press left hand, clean and press right hand, pull up, your formula. And he does ladders, 1, clean and press left hand, clean and press right hand, 1, 1, 1. Then it's 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 5. When I was preparing for the RKC years ago, all I had was a 28 kilo kettlebell. Oh, and the after those workouts, you do 2 days a week, you do swings, and 1 day a week, you do snatches. When I built up to 75, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds of that. 75 clean and press left, 75 clean and press right, and 75 pull-ups. I really felt like I was ready for anything. I looked good, I felt good, and I really did. I had no real issues with the RKC. And this back when it was very brutal. 3 days, San Jose sun, swings, probably 10 to 12 rounds of 10 to 20 an hour. I mean, probably in a day, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, 1,000 swings. It was a little bit too much. When we did the snatch, we did the Viking Warrior Protocol, where we did it for 25 minutes. Whatever 14 times 25 is the number of snatches I did with the 24 kilo bell. I mean, come on, that's a lot. But I think this workout prepared me for it. Back in the 1960s, Tom, many people I knew, many articles I read in the strength and health magazines, all people did sometimes would go in the gym and clean and press. Now, when I say clean and press, I mean both kinds. Clean and press, clean and press, clean and press, clean and press, or clean and press, 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 press. When I was preparing for to finally get a 300-pound clean, I found that early in the prep, clean and press, clean and press, clean and press really helped me just kind of prepare the platform for the attempt. But by the time I was getting close and the loads were getting big, I was doing clean and press, 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 press. Sorry to make that. Sometimes if I say something on our podcast, I got to make sure I add that little extra level of clarity, because otherwise you may misunderstand what I'm trying to say. The rite of passage is clean and press, pull-ups, swings, and or snatches. I would still add the suitcase carrier or something like that to it, because I can't help myself. Is that a pretty good program? Tom, I don't know if you can do a better program than that. For most of our listeners, for most of the time, something along those lines. And it gets us back to the question before. If you're working your glutes with the swing, the snatch, the hip thrust, the kettlebell swing, the kettlebell snatch, the hip thrust, the back squat, the front squat, the overhead squat, the deadlift family, and you're doing vertical presses, toss in pull-ups, why, that's good. That's really good. Remember my standard, pretty good is the highest standard? I think you're nailing it there. Tom, I like this idea. Again, I've had people online hear me say something like, or read me say something like that, and then later on, I did this and I hated it. Okay, not everyone's designed to do simple programs. Not everyone's designed to do stuff for, like I told my students today for the millionth time, everything works. Everything works for about 6 weeks. So if you can do this for 6 weeks, I think you're going to be way ahead of the curve. Excellent. Great question. Thank you. Got a question from Julian. I really enjoy squatting over and head press, and therefore thrusters are a big part of my training. Okay. I wonder how heavy thrusters should be done and how often, since it's quite taxing. Okay, first off, I am not a fan of heavy thrusters. You mentioned doing them with 10, 12 to 20 kilo kettlebells, and that changed my. I'm not a big fan of heavy barbell thrusters. I think you end up with a slow quarter squat and a very odd push and a push jerk. And it's like one of those things. It's great, it's great. And I remember 15 years ago, it was the lift of the day. I used to call it the lift du jour. And great, good for you, you do it. But if you're doing with kettlebells or dumbbells, I can see some value in that. You mentioned that you're doing them with slam balls, but that's an interesting combination. Never use a bouncy ball and slam balls, just a reminder. And he says this, lately I've been taking your 10, 15, 25, 50 format for the 10K swing challenge and throwing in slam ball thrusters for 15 reps before each set of swings. I got to see this video, because it sounds to me like you're doing a set of 10 swings, a set of 15 slam ball thrusters, a set of 15 swings, a set of 15 slam ball thrusters, 25 swings, 15 slam ball thrusters, and 50 followed by slam ball thrusters for 5 rounds. And then doing that 20 days or, in 4 weeks. To me, that sounds like a lot of volume. Is that a good compliment? Well, it ties us back to our last question. And I know it's difficult. I don't like saying that on the podcast because Ozzy and Brian like to snip these up a little bit. But what we're starting to get a sense of, and it makes me happy, Julian, whether or not I like thrusters doesn't matter. What I like, that's very important, by the way. Just because I don't like something doesn't mean it's bad. I just don't like it. Doesn't mean I'm a bad person or good person. My experience, the way we do things, doesn't always work with thrusters. That doesn't mean that maybe I coach them really poorly. Maybe I kind of suck at doing them. That's reality there. But if you like them and you're doing swings mixed with thrusters, you are tying into what Yonda taught us. You're tying into what those women who called themselves Atkins taught me. You're tying into my experience with the importance of if you work your glutes and you work your overhead press, if you find a glute dominant lift and you do vertical presses with them, and then somehow you add a vertical pull to it and a loaded carry, almost universally good things are going to happen. So I like what you're saying here. It's interesting because I just feel like we're getting the same question with different shades every time. And yet what makes me happy, Julian and the other people are asking these same kind of questions, is I'm starting to get the sense of people are getting it. For longevity, for general fitness, for performance for sure, maybe even for health, and certainly for body composition, these simpler training programs that focus on those key movements, the glutes, the delts, the triceps, the ab wall, the vertical press, the vertical pull, ab wheel, loaded carry, a big glute exercise, deadlift, swings, hip thrusts, and all of a sudden, ping, you have the workout I told my students the other day, the simplest way to make easy strength work. It's just interesting how it all comes around to this. The downside of the workouts I'm hearing about is, not a lot of people like to do clean and presses. Not a lot of people like to do front squats. But boy, for bang for the buck, I can't think of anything better. Great questions. These have been great questions. Much appreciated. We had a question here. Okay, this is a tough one for me, okay? It's Jason, okay? Hey, coach, what do you think about training like David Goggins, where the main focus is pushing the mental limits and developing mental resilience and self-esteem, rather than physical health or longevity benefits? I found somewhat extreme endurance training, initially motivated by David's book, helped me with my depression. What are your thoughts? Listen, if you're having issues with depression, please, and I'm begging you, I would like you to consult mental health professionals rather than me. I don't feel comfortable. Here's what I can do for you. I had a long walk not long ago here, all the way to Richmond, with a friend who is struggling with some issues. I can provide no answers, but I can listen to you. Jason, I hope you have someone in your life who you can listen to, someone you can talk to. It would mean a lot to me, okay? Interesting, as I'm answering this question, I have one of my students come to me who, when we sat and talked for a little while, because of my background, he felt comfortable talking about his background. And this student kind of poo-pooed the question you asked. and because this person has seen some really bad things in a different country's military, but still saw some bad things, and doesn't need to see any more of it. Very candid about needing some help, very candid about making bad choices, trying to self-medicate. So do I disagree with this? No, I think there's real value in sometimes in resilience, in actually training resilience. I have a workshop called Bounce, and I wasn't candid when I talked about when I first gave the workshop called Bounce. You know, I stuck with I stuck with trying to, with just my brother Phil's death, where literally in this room I found out about it 4 years ago, and then of course having to deal with his funeral and then my daughter's wedding the next week. There was more bad going on in my life. My Bounce workshop is resilience, and I always joke about Chumbawamba. I get knocked down, but I get back up again. I always say the poet Chumbawamba. But the thing is, resilience is getting knocked down and the skill set to get back up. I like Nassim Taleb's phrase, anti-fragile, even though it got completely overused in my industry. It's the idea that struggles make you better. I know that's true, but I gotta beg you to make sure you do the other stuff too. Try to go to sleep as appropriate, you know, within 2 hours of sundown. You know, don't self-medicate. Try to teach yourself to wake up at the same time every day. Don't hit the snooze button. Drink a lot of water. Take a lot of protein. Eat a lot of vegetables. Go for walks. Find people you can talk to. You know, lift weights, push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded, carry. Talk to somebody. If you have a dog, dogs are wonderful. Talk to your dog. If you don't have a dog, talk to a tree. Talk it out. Caring is sharing, or sharing is caring, whatever it is. Try not to be an island. Reach out, get help. So do I agree with what you wrote about David's work? I agree in the idea that doing things, long distance running, pulling up heavy weights, you know, having challenges builds up your resilience. But that's only part of the whole thing. I had it explained to me the other day that I don't want you to miss David Goggins' concept about the cookie jar. You can't just take cookies out, my friend. You got to put some cookies back in. I'm getting worried you're just taking the cookies out. Make sure you add cookies back to the jar. Get your sleep, eat your food, that kind of thing. I hope that helped. And blessings to you, and hang in there. Thank you. We have a question from Anthony. That was a quick segue. Anthony says this: I enjoy rucking, and especially rucking my local mountains. I have recently set some lofty personal goals to ruck hike some of the larger peaks in my area, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to train for it. I'm a 37-year-old male who is in decent shape. Now, this is the coolest part of this question. He's trying to lose 100 pounds, and he's already 70 pounds on the way. So, Anthony, before I even move on, I just got to say congratulations. Tip of the hat to you, and what a good job. So I'm hoping my goals don't conflict with each other too bad. I currently do park bench style type workouts based around the push-pull hinge squat philosophy and ruck or run, which is great. I love it. Recently, I'm just going to summarize, it's long. Recently, he did a really strenuous ruck, and he got some advice. He trains in a suburban area with kind of moderate hills. Of course, I live in Utah, so this is what hiking in Utah is like. Straight up, straight down. It's tough to hike in Utah to enjoy it. Everything I read seems to suggest a different approach about improving his steep rucking. Building quad strength through heavy front squats, It's interesting, we have a marathon in Utah called the Deseret Marathon, and people think when they come to Utah they're going to have the best time of their life, because the first 10 miles of the 26.2 are all downhill. It destroys your quadriceps and makes it nearly impossible to run after you do that first 10 miles. Building the quadriceps for rucking probably is best done by walking down hills, and it doesn't look nearly as tough as it sounds, but it's that isometric hit on every single rep. He then goes on to say, high rep weighted box steps. I would rather do hill sprints, and I got a way to make that work. Conditioning type work, and many more. Do you have any insights? Oh, yes, I do. Years ago, a friend of mine who's a famous writer said, I got a job. I go, that's great. He goes, the only problem is they want me to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and I only have a few weeks to prepare for it. I love this kind of thing. So at danjohnuniversity.com, and I know I can't give you the whole thing online because it's a long prep period, but I have my mountain climbing program. I'm very proud of it. I've had such great feedback. First, it's real. So, like, for example, one of the things you do is seesaw presses, and it doesn't seem like much, but when you're hiking, very often your arms have to come into play. So the seesaw presses, there's goblet squats, obviously, because the goblet squats are for when nature calls. I do have people do sprints just one day a week, because sprinting and then walking, don't worry, it's all laid out for you. I also have recommendations about the last week or two how to prepare for it, including working on your elimination, because that's a big issue when you do big long hikes. Constipation on and hiking is a terrible combination. I'm very proud of it. I think it's pretty good. Some of the weight workouts look like a standard like RKC prep. There's a whole bunch of loaded carries in it, and a lot of it is rucking. I also recommend on the hard workout days to just go for a walk. I think I would love you to use the boots you use when you do the walks or the rucks. I think it's organized. I think it's appropriate. I think it's reasonable. And I think it's a really good program. I think on the site you can actually pull it down to your iPhone to look like an app. And you can follow it along that way. I got to tell you, it's about as good as I can do. I'm not sure I can do better. There's always little tiny things you kind of look at. Oh, that should be 2, 3, 5 instead of whatever, But I think it's a great program. danjohnuniversity.com, the mountain climbing program. Anthony, you'll find it both in the workout generator area. And then you'll also find it in either the downloads or the books section. But it's all there for you. Okay. I want you to try it. Get back to me. Email the podcast and say, I just want to let Dan know how it went. If you loved it, let me know. If you hated it, let me know how I can make it better. Okay. Great question. Okay. I got a question from John. I recently received some advice from an amateur bodybuilder that while strength and hypertrophy are both important, it's better to focus on building muscle. So how do you build muscle without building strength? Back in the 60s, they called this muscle spinning, but we'll move on. While I'm still young as opposed to strength, John, I can't disagree with this more, but I'm going to do my best to answer the whole question. I know your common recommendation is to build as much strength as possible for age 40. I mean, within reason, yeah. But does that same advice apply for muscle mass as well? Lean body mass, yes. Again, what's lean body mass without strength? Without performance enhancing stuff, especially some of this new stuff that basically kills you, I don't know how you can build muscle mass without building strength. If you go back to the work from Tom DeLorme, and I'm not far from when he did the research, mass and power, mass and strength always seem to dance together. I would love to know your stance on the importance of training for hypertrophy versus strength. My goal is largely personal development, health, and longevity. Well, if it's longevity, it's strength for sure. If you feel that hypertrophy is an important strength, is it worth sacrificing my ability to build muscle while I'm young in order to hone in on strength case? Okay, real quick in the future, everybody, I hate either or questions, but I'm going to answer it, okay? Because my answer is both and. Which is better carryover for later in life? And what would I be losing if I switched to bodybuilding style training in the near future? All I can do is focus on the Golden Eagle. What the Golden Eagle Tom Platz taught us. It's nothing new. It's nothing original. It's been said before, but he says it the best. Folks, it's not high reps. Folks, it's not high weights. Folks, it's high reps and with high reps. So when I was squatting 315 for 30, then squatting 275 for 30, then squatting 225 for 30 in one workout, 145 kilos, 125 kilos, 100 kilos, all for sets of 30, my legs expanded larger than ever been in my life. Interesting, my waistline shrunk. Because when you're putting that kind of hit on your body, your body starts to look for everything it can to survive, and it just starts utilizing fat. I can't prove that, but I know it's true. High reps and high load are where you want to be. I mean, you certainly could probably go into a machine and, do a bunch of high reps, 15 to 20, and just get the pump, and do 12 different exercises. But you know what? I don't know how long. Got to be careful here. There's 3 different things that lead to hypertrophy, and I have to have my notes or my lecture to explain which ones they are, because I forget it the second I walk out, because building hypertrophy has value for some of you, but the problem is it doesn't stay very long. But if you're going to bench press, let's see, I've benched 225 for like high 20, say I think it's 27. I've squatted 315 for 30. When you're doing those workouts, not that 225 is very heavy, not that 315 is very heavy, when your body super compensates, when your body adapts, those adaptations stick around for a while. So I'm going to tell you this: high reps plus high loads equals long-term muscle mass and long-term strength. I was about to say your mileage may vary, but I don't know of anybody that's never failed. Now, maybe you might not look like Arnold 1975, but you're still going to look like you've been in the weight room a little bit in your life. Great question. And if you just did the Reg Park stuff, you'd pick 5 sets of 5, military press, pull up, bench press, row, deadlift, squat, curl, a tricep extension of some kind, and then maybe calf raises, maybe ab work, but don't take either of those too seriously. 5 sets of 5, 3 days a week, and go really heavy. I think you'll get your mass. When you're doing that workout with 405 in the back squat, 5 sets of 5, and 495 in the deadlift for 5 sets of 5, yeah, you'll have mass and size. Good question. Thank you. Wow. Hey, that's it. Boy, what a great set of questions. It was kind of fun to see how, even if the last question about hypertrophy versus strength, how they all kind of squared around the same concepts. I mean, well, I said other ones too, and I really appreciate that. Well, it's episode 200, and I got to say a shout out to first Larry Draper, who changed my life when she started publishing my work, and we started doing the newsletter. The newsletter led to the podcast, and I couldn't do the podcast because if you've seen the way I do stuff, I suck. But it was Brian Gwaltney who really got me going on this. And so thank you so much, Brian. And then, of course, Ozzy, who does all the editing and all the hard work. Ozzy needs, if you ever get a chance to interact with Ozzy, please say, you are an angel, because he puts up with all my, he makes me look good each and every week. And I got to tell you, with a face like this, it's hard for me to look good. Thank you to them, and thank you to all of you who come in every week. Please, if you can, of course, like, subscribe, and you're supposed to do something else, but I don't remember what it is. Like and subscribe, thanks so much to all of you. We've had a lot of people ask a lot of questions here on the podcast, and I appreciate it. This isn't fake sincerity. I really mean it. I like this. When I do workshops around the world, and some of you come up and say, hey, I asked you a question on the podcast, and I meet you in real time. It's just a joy. And I like this. When I was young, one of my neighbors called me the Pied Piper, because I had this kind of weird ability to lead people to do things. And now I lead you all to do high rep squats and all this other 10,000 swings, 10,000 hip thrusts, and all these silly challenges. And I get great feedback from it, and I keep trying to get better. But I couldn't do it without you, the listeners. So until next time, and I say the same thing every week, and I mean it. In my own case, I really stress it. But until next time, let's all keep on lifting and learning. And thank you.